Used to be, years ago, VMI and VPI at the time instead of Virginia Tech. Had an annual football game on Thanksgiving Day, just like the service academies. And our corps would march down the streets of Roanoke into the stadium, and so would theirs. And they'd form on the field, go up in the stands, and so would our corps.
Where VMI always got it over us was that they had a cannon. It was a little cannon, it was almost just a pop gun. But when we played VMI every year at Thanksgiving, whenever VMI was lucky enough to score a touchdown, they'd fire that little cannon.
By the sophomore year, they did the same thing, and their cadets sat over there, just like high school kids at the time, and would chant, "Where's your cannon? Where's your cannon?"
Well, Butch Harper and I had heard that just about one time too many. And so we decided that we were going to build a cannon, but not some little pop gun.
We're going to build the largest game cannon in the world. And that's how Skipper got its start, just that simple.
Over the next year, Harper, Hickam, and fellow cadet George Fox took the necessary steps to make their dream a reality. Hickam, armed with the blueprint of a Civil War cannon and aided by the school's engineering department, constructed the cannon's mold. Harper, meanwhile, went about collecting the brass necessary to mold the cannon and enlisted the help of the Virginia Foundry Company, whose head Paul Huffman agreed to forge the cannon for free. With the cannon being molded in Roanoke and a carriage secured in Washington, D.C., the boys moved on to the problem of how to fire their mighty weapon.
So I took the easy way out and basically built little bomblets out of plastic squeeze bottles, like for mustard or ketchup that you find in a cafeteria, which I borrowed liberally from the Corps cafeteria.
All we had was plastic mustard or ketchup bottles filled with a half pound of superfine black gunpowder and 2 cherry bombs sitting on the top of it with the fuse sticking out of the top of that little top that you see on a squeeze bottle.
Just toss it down the barrel and boom, it made a nice sound, and I didn't have to worry about tamping down powder charges and all that mess. And so everybody was aware that we were trying to figure this out and taking bets on whether we were going to blow ourselves up.
On the Friday before the game, Harper and some fellow cadets piled in a rental truck to retrieve the finished products. After making stops in Roanoke and Washington, D.C. to pick up the barrel and carriage respectively, the boys headed home, their momentary joy soon to be extinguished by the greatest of national tragedies.
On the way back, we weren't outside of Washington more than about, I'd say 15, maybe 20 minutes. And the lead car, who we were following, pulled over and they came back and they said, "The president's been shot."
It turned out that I believe that was the day that Jack Kennedy was assassinated. And of course, I mean, it was a shock to everybody. And we were just so excited and so happy that we had this cannon. It was all going to be wonderful. And then to have this terrible thing happen to our country, it naturally took the edge off of our joy.
We said, now what are we going to do? This is terrible. Well, we determined that any military reservation at the death of the president fires a 50-gun salute. So we figured out pretty much that maybe that's how we're going to test Skipper. The testing of Skipper and the first firing of Skipper will be in the salute of the death of John F. Kennedy, 50 rounds.
And while the nation mourned, the boys found inspiration in a name.
We determined that in honor of John F. Kennedy, because that truly was the first firing of Skipper, that we would call it Skipper in honor of his naval heritage. And at the same time, it was a time-honored tradition that senior privates in the Corps of Cadets at Virginia Tech were called skippers. And so it had a dual meaning, and both Sonny and I just absolutely, and George Fox, just absolutely loved that dual meaning to it, and so Skipper was the name that we dubbed for it, and it caught on.
When it was announced the game would be played as planned, Harper and Hickam began preparation for Skipper's grand premiere.
But Butch is just a great showman. He's like he was the P.T. Barnum of the Virginia Tech Cadet Corps at that time. So he had in mind that we would still keep this thing a secret.
So we're not going to bring the cannon in with us as we march down the street. We're going to hide it under the stadium in a storage room the night before the game and guard it. And then we're going to have 50 rat freshman cadets on cue, when we cue them, to bring it out into the stadium and position it and bring it in attached to huge ropes that they'll all be pulling, very Romanesque, into the stadium. And so we let VMI form on the field and go up in the stands, and we let them shoot their little John in the perfect smoke ring going up into the sky. And then we knew they were going to do it. We let them chant, "Where's your cannon? Where's your cannon?"
And here we come dragging this humongous cannon inside there, and we're chanting, "Here's our cannon, here's our cannon." And we turned this thing around, and Butch came running over and said, "Let's fire it now." You know, he couldn't wait. Let's just fire it now. And we had both football teams were out on the field, and they were going through their little sprints and so on. And we didn't think anything about it. We had this thing aimed right at them.
Put in a charge, put in a second charge, and then looked up at us and said, "Put in another one." Truly the largest charge ever to this day shot out of Skipper.
And when that thing went off, it was like there was this shockwave went right through the VMI cadets. They disappeared in this gallop of smoke, huge smoke. The Skipper reared back a little bit. It went about a ½ inch off the ground. This thing was so heavy. It was just amazing to see that. But you could see the shockwave just going through the smoke, hitting the core of the VMI core on the other side, right up through there, and it cracked the glass in the press box on the other side.
And a big booming announcement came over the PA system that said, "Would you please aim the cannon away from the press box?" And of course that made Sonny and my day.
And Virginia Tech just wiped up the field with VMI that day. We like to wore the Skipper out firing it.
Never again did we ever hear anything from the VMI Corps cadets. Mission accomplished.
For Harper and Hickam, Skipper's successful debut was a sign of things to come in their own lives. Hickam went on to become an aerospace engineer at NASA. His second career as an author took off with the success of his book, Rocket Boys, and the award-winning movie it spawned, October Sky. Ben Harper made a career working in advertising for Kroger and invented Thunder over Louisville, the largest annual pyrotechnic show in North America, which opens the Kentucky Derby Festival. All these years later, the Skipper still holds a special place in their hearts.
So it was Skipper in that project that changed my entire life. I became a member of the Kentucky Derby Festival as a director. I created their opening ceremonies, which is now the largest fireworks show, light show, and air show in the world, all in one day, attended by 800,000 people. And it all goes back to my explosive roots with Skipper. And if you take a look at Sonny, he went on into NASA, working with rockets and astronauts and what have you. And so I think that little thing that sometimes you have in life that can affect the rest of your life and the direction you go and what is your destiny. You never know when it's going to come, and you never know what it's going to be. And for Sonny and I, it was Skipper.
All right, fire! Fire! That's how you fire the cannon.
To see and go back with and watch the reverence and the seriousness with which something that we created back in 1962 is held now is amazing.
Though the spirit behind the tradition has remained the same, the cannon itself has not. The original skipper was retired in 1982 and now rests in the Cadet Museum. Over 20 years after his father, Paul Huffman Sr., forged the original, Paul Huffman Jr. molded the more sophisticated Skipper II, which debuted in 1984.
The only really different aspects of this gun from the original is back on the breech has been modified with a hammer so that we can use a 22 caliber cartridge to actually start the ignition chain and fire the rifle. That makes it a lot more safe.
The cannon's game day firings are now supervised by the Skipper Crew, a group of sophomore and junior cadets. Long before kickoff, the Skipper Crew's game day begins on the other side of campus.
Lord, protect the crew, keep them safe, grant us no misfire. May our powder always flow, our boom be plentiful, and our team be strong. Amen. All right, let's hook it up. And then we basically just hook the cannon up to the truck and we drive over there.
After arriving at the stadium, the Skipper Crew pushes the cannon into position while the charges are prepared outside.
Before the fire, you're kind of, I guess, anxious. Is it gonna go off? Because sometimes you get misfire.
The only thing that is going through my mind is, please let it fire, please let it fire, please let it fire.
I can tell you as a former Marine and a former Marine artillery officer and working with these young people, when this gun goes off at the last note of the national anthem, there's no greater part of the game. No greater part of the game.
And then once it fires and, you know, everyone starts cheering, then it's kind of like my relief, like, okay, good, it fired, I did my job right.
It's an amazing feeling. Like, I felt nothing like it anywhere else. And as soon as cannon fires and people just going crazy, I don't know, my body gets chill and it just, I don't know how to explain. You gotta be there.
The gun crews still have the same spirit that the original Skipper Crew did, and I'm proud of them. Every time I go back, that's where I go. The heck with watching a football game, I go out and help those guys fire that cannon.
So the tradition goes forward, and it just makes it gives Sonny and I and George a warm place in our heart every time we go back. A wonderful feeling to know that something that you had a part of that long ago is still a tradition at Virginia Tech.